Welcome, folks. This is House Corrections and Institutions. It's Friday afternoon, February 21st. It's our 1 o'clock meeting. We're going to be going over our recommendations to our colleagues and Appropriations Committee on the $300,000 to convert the work camp into providing treatment services for folks. Ben has drafted new language. It's on our webpage, and I do have paper copies here for folks who want paper copies. Could I have some? Yeah, this today.
Just wanted to clarify that it's the secure facility, not the work.
Listed it as the NECC.
Okay, that works.
So we're, it's thought it was a work camp. That's what we'd always been talking about, is the work camp.
No, I believe it's a secure facility. I think it was a couple days ago that Commissioner Dummel was talking about like having step down units. So he was talking about the entire.
He's talking about the entire facility
Yes.
is secure as well as the work camp.
I don't believe it's summer camp, it's just secure site.
It might involve some of the work camp, possibly. I think it's still TBD.
Okay. It's all in the same place, same place, two separate buildings. You've got one building that's a secure building. And then across the pathway, you've got the work camp building, which is built very different than the secure. The work camp is a metal building. It is not concrete. It's an open area. You got two wings to it with about 50 beds in each of them, and they're bunk beds. And I'm remembering the governor's budget address, he said work camp. And so there's a lot of things going through my mind when he said work camp to be used for treatment services, because I was thinking, you're gonna have to renovate. And I've spoken to DRC and said, if you do the work camp, it's minimum security. And you're gonna have to upgrade that to medium security. So the work camp has been, I wasn't aware it was the secure facility as well. Were other folks thinking it was the secure facility?
First, that time that concept is, I recall hearing.
A little different. What were other people? Then we got
I
Brian.
didn't think it was work camp. I thought it was one of the facility,
I thought.
but that was in my brain and it was like
I'm
a
wondering
building.
about your brain.
I thought it was a but isn't it the long building? It's a long rectangular building that has 100 beds in it.
That's
Is that
your work camp.
Oh, then it was the work camp.
What the consultants.
Did you just cause trouble, Haley?
I think so.
I would advise the committee that rarely has Chair Emmons' memory. Done her good service.
So what you're saying, Ben, is we can move on.
Oh, Ben.
In my experience.
Ben's got that right.
It is very rare.
I heard
I'd
work
like to know what
camp.
you got for Christmas.
I have this bad. So Ben, it's all yours.
Okay,
Introduce yourself.
good afternoon. Happy Friday.
Mhm.
We know what happens in your.
Right. For the record, Ben Novogrodsky from the Office of Legislative Counsel. Before the committee is proposed language to place in the 2026 budget, specifically in section B 1100 subsection I. Currently in subsection I, it is a $300,000 allocation to the NECC, which is the Northeast Correctional Complex. This details that a bit more, breaks it down, and adds some other approval or rather review language. So initially, you'll see on line 2 in fiscal year 2026, funds are appropriated for the following: $200,000 from the general fund to retain a consultant to develop an implementation plan for the Northeast Correctional Complex's transition to a treatment-focused facility for incarcerated Vermonters, and also adds a subdivision B of $100,000 from the general fund for early phase implementation of the NECC transition to a treatment focused.
I want to stop you there.
Mhm.
Because the committee, and I wanted them to put out the total 300, because I wanted people to be very clear. I know we were talking as a committee that we would only allow, we'd only say 200,000, which would allow them to go out with an RFP and not recommend the remaining 100,000. So only recommend 200,000 instead of 300,000. So, hang on. So seeing that language
Hold on.
up there. And you took it out already.
I did.
Seeing the language before us, not what's up, the 100,000, do people want to still stay with just the 200,000 and not recommend that extra 100,000? Recommend 200 instead of 300?
I don't think we can answer with the language here, because to me, there's an ambiguity in lines 3 and 4 about whether the 200K is the retention of the consultant or the development of the plan, and I think that's where our misunderstanding the other day came up.
Yeah.
Well, so what this does is that it adds to retain a consultant to develop the plan. The other language did not have that. So this is more detailed.
For me, the 200 though, like, should be, and the plan will be developed. Like, is that how you read this language?
I mean, the way that, I mean, obviously, I'm not here to interpret the language for you, which is an odd thing to say, given my role. I understand that. But it's the role of my office. But I mean, it's the qualifier is to retain a consultant to develop that.
Yeah, the consultant's going to develop.
So if you want to flesh that out some more, that's the committee's prerogative.
I just
And
mean, does the 200 get us the consultant, or does the 200 get us the plan?
Both.
that's the policy
If
consideration.
it's both, it better be both, yeah.
That's the intent,
that's what
right?
you're saying,
You
that's
gotta
okay.
hire someone
So,
to develop the plan. So the 200 is gonna be for hiring someone and developing that plan.
so my question, you guys can answer this, nice people over there. So we had a lot of questions the other day about the 100,000 from the commissioner's testimony and a little bit of confusion. So at one point, I thought he said that could do without it until January and come back and report, and then those
To
thoughts
which, the 100?
without the 100. And so what is your take on what is the 100,000 for specifically in your minds? And can you wait till January? Or will this be done before January, whatever you want to, however you want to word it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the 100,000 was for the kind of initial sort of seed money to make any kind of quick changes, I think, recommended in the plan potentially. That said, I do want the committee, I think the department wants the committee to weigh in. I just know that given the budget cycles, right, this would be authorized being July 1. And then we would wait kind of there'd be another budget cycle, another fiscal year to wait for more money, for more changes. So I think that 100,000 was hopefully to make some kind of those initial changes for, to get us through to the next fiscal year.
So what, for at least for me at least, what exactly are these initial changes? Like, what do you mean by initial? Because clearly a program, no matter like a real program, is going to be millions, not. So
Right.
what is 100,000 conceptually at least getting?
That would be driven by the consultant,
Right,
but it's possible that 100,000 could go towards some of the beginnings of the infrastructural upgrades to the facility. It's possible.
so not very far is really what the answer.
Yeah, no, I don't think it would be anything substantive.
So I guess, okay, so. That's good, Jared.
So we were at the point of just doing 200,000. What I'd like to do is keep that in the back of my mind, that we were 200,000. We were concerned about going forward with starting to implement a plan without legislative input to see what the plan was. And that's why we said no to the 100,000.
Mhm.
What I'd like to do is keep that 100,000 language there for now. And let us go through the rest of the proposed language, and then we can revisit that to see if we want to eliminate it or keep it in 100,000. Okay?
Just to continue on, so something I did is that if you see on line 3, the paper copy you have in front of you says, from the general fund to retain a consultant to develop. I have a potential clarification is on the screen rather than to say and develop. So it would encompass both the retention of the consultant and the development of the implementation plan.
Yes, please.
Beautiful. Okay. And then as far as the $100,000 language on line 7 and 8, the phrasing on that, so the way it's phrased is for early phase implementation of the NECC transition. Do you want that to be construction? Do you, what does implementation mean to the committee?
Can we hold off on that until we go through the rest of the language? But when we say NECC, does that include both? I'm looking at DOC. Does that include both your secure and work camp? It does not, does it?
To my understanding, it's just the secure side right now. Obviously, the consultant could perhaps have different opinions given their expertise.
If the committee's desire is to ensure that it's only the work camp,
Or vice versa?
or vice versa, or if it's both, I would suggest leaving just the general reference to NECC as is. However, you might want to clarify it further to say the work camp at NECC or the secure facility at NECC.
Well, what I'm hearing is now it's a secure facility, not the work camp. But they could come back and say, well, we could use some of the beds in the work camp. So I'm seeing it as the whole secure and work camp part. That's how I'm interpreting
That's
it.
the same.
And I think the work camp has its own title. Right?
Caledonia County.
Would I be so dare just, is it possible to get a hold of the commissioner and ask him what he intended?
I have been texting with him and he
Thank you.
did confirm that.
And he what?
Yeah, he confirmed that it was the secure side, not the work camp.
About the work camp. Right?
Yeah.
Is that being-
State.
Maybe that's shorthand.
Has that been confirmed with the Secretary of VHS or the governor's office?
The governor said work camp in his budget address.
That's-
I mean, it was, and I sat there and thought, oh, that's gonna need some work in that building.
So that's gonna be something we have to flag in to come back to because we can't about it today.
Well, I'd include both the Northeast Correctionals facility or center and the work.
So right now with the current language, if you just left it as is, it could be either or both.
Yes.
So we can kind of just leave it.
I don't know if it can, because your secure facility, what is it called? Northeast,
Correctional complex.
that's your NECC, it doesn't include.
So it does not include it. Okay.
You might want to just make sure it also. includes
Work camp has a different name.
the-
Right, it's the Caledonia County Work Camp, right? So what's the committee prerogative? Do you want to include both? NECC or and the work camp?
For the 200,000, I'd do.
We don't do and.
Can't do
You can't do
it.
and/or.
No,
I mean,
and A, I would do
Yeah.
both. And
If
let's
it's-
hold off on B until we go through the
it
rest.
would be language along the lines that, implementation plan to convert any of the following facilities, work camp, complex. So I could adjust that. Is that how the committee would like it? Any of the following facilities?
For now.
To that effect?
Please.
I mean, Alice or Isaac or whoever, is that sort of a colloquialism, the governor's usage, like that area is the work camp?
No,
No,
separate facilities. They're all on the same big property.
right.
they're kind of side by side, but they're physically separated.
Refer to the whole place as that.
Different staff and different,
I would say colloquially, like we often, when in the department, when we say northeast, we're kind of referring to both the work camps and the facility. But,
We wouldn't call the whole site.
Larger point,
but I, you know,
if I might, because I like to make larger points, is that we're not solving this problem right this second till we get higher information. So we need to flag it, and then get more information and try to clarify. And get that information back to us.
I'm having trouble with that word or.
No, because it's prefaced by any of the following facilities to a treatment, so it would be, yeah.
Oh,
Fancy way of and/or.
That is the drafting convention that I follow. It's not mine.
Thank you, Ben.
It's professional legal expertise.
And so kept everything else, and then as far as we're gonna just kind of
Hold on.
wait on B for a little bit.
And just walk us through number 2. And again, this could change number 2 as well. 2 and 3.
Second. Okay, so for point 3, or for point 2, so given the letter's intent, which is really to review and do an explicit approval, there are some constitutional issues that I need to flag for the committee to do it that way. So there is the delegation doctrine. And also there's the province of the executive, so it's a separation of powers issue to a degree. So essentially, it's usual practice and also constitutional for executive agencies to enter into contracts to execute the will of the legislature, right? When the legislature starts getting into the process of approving contracts, it raises these constitutional issues. Now, I have to do more research on it because I haven't a lot of time since last night to right now. But that's an issue I wanted to flag for the committee, that it would be unusual to do it that way and may raise constitutional issues. So the suggested proposal I put before the committee to consider as an alternative is in point 2, joint legislative justice oversight. And the reason why justice oversight is listed is because this is all going to be done during the off session. You know, this bill goes into effect, let's say July 1st, right? We're not in session. There are various joint legislative committees that meet over the summer. The joint legislative justice oversight is one that really has oversight responsibilities for the justice system, which involves the Department of Corrections. It used to actually be the Correctional Oversight Committee and has expanded its jurisdiction over the years. It is made up of both members of the Senate and members of the House. And they all have, the members that are appointed all have varying experience, if you will, in the issues that come before the committee. So for instance, corrections is represented, the judiciary committees are represented, health and human services are usually represented, appropriations. So everyone that kind of touches the justice system, those various committees of jurisdiction, there's some representation on the committee for that oversight role. So just to give the newer members some context about what this committee does. So what this would do is that it charges that committee to review any request for proposal to retain the consultant for the purpose described in subdivision 1, it's now 1A of this section. So what that does is that, okay, you get sort of a report back, you can review it, but you don't weigh in on it necessarily.
Right.
Like there's not an explicit approval, but you're going to know what's going on. You can discuss it, but there's nothing that the committee does to explicitly approve it because of that constitutional issue that I raised.
You can voice concerns, but you can't make a mandate.
Exactly.
Connor.
I mean, I would just say I'd be strongly in favor of scrapping number 2 completely. I think whether it's a committee this summer or not, the idea of like legislators, like looking over RFPs seems pretty out of whack from whatever I've experienced. And I don't think we need that level of detail. I think we need to know conceptually what's going on there and have a bit of a backstop. That's just where I'm at.
Which is what I thought we agreed on.
Right, that was.
Well, that's what point 3 is.
Point 3 is.
So point 3 may get to that, to the point that you're raising, Representative Gore, which is on or before November 15th of this year, DOC shall submit a written report to the Oversight Committee concerning the consultant's findings and recommendation concerning, again, related to, and depending on what we end up doing with NECC or the final decision, the transition to a treatment-focused facility. That report contains detailed transition plan, expected outcomes and measures of success, an assessment of how the transition aligns with best practices for residential treatment programs, and input from the department's current medical providers, including an analysis of how the program developed would impact the existing contract with WellPAC.
So do we get to at least read it or not?
So the reason why I brought it, made the deadline for November 15th is that so the Justice Oversight Committee would get a chance to review it, and potentially make, you know, if they wanted to write a letter to this committee to consider during the budget adjustment period, that would, there's not explicit authorization to do it, but they can do it within their authority. So that can change, obviously, but that's a potential outcome.
Well, there's a couple moving pieces here. So if we just do the 200,000, not the 100, okay? It allows, gives enough money to go out, hire a consultant and develop a plan, okay? So the timing of that, they wouldn't be able to go forward with anything because they don't have the money to go forward with it. But at least you'd have some direction in terms of how much money it's going to cost to implement this program. And maybe renovation costs in the buildings, maybe. So time-wise, they would need more money. They would need to come to the legislature for a request for more money. That could happen during BAA. And that could then say, you don't need the Justice Oversight Committee. Legislature itself would be able to look through that implementation plan along with the request of money for BAA in the general fund next January. It's one avenue. Okay. Another avenue could be, again, they don't have the 100. They would be done by November 15th with a consultant. They hope. They hope. They may not. So then if they're done, they could report the results of that. And by saying the report shall contain the following implies that the RFP really needs to deal with those ABCs. Joint Justice would then make a recommendation to the General Assembly on whether or not to move forward with the implementation. They can't say yes or no to the implementation.
And to give the committee a little knowledge of sort of like the timeline. So Justice Oversight typically has their last meeting in December. So what this would do, reports due in November, so they'd have one meeting to essentially review it and then submit a recommendation if they so choose. Now, that November 15th date could change if the committee wanted to remove Justice Oversight from the equation and either have the report go to the General Assembly or to the institutions committees or corrections committees. You could then push that report back by a month, maybe 2 months. And then, you know, because by January 15th, the budget adjustment isn't done yet.
It comes out the middle of December.
Right, but I mean, I'm just saying that it just passed the House, what, 2 weeks ago, a week ago? Yeah.
In the middle of a biennium, Appropriations Committees gets the budget adjustment in the middle of December, and they start working, I think it's a week before Christmas, they start working. Thanks.
Just my personal opinion. If it was me, I don't know if you changed your opinion yet, Connor, but I would say I agree with Connor on, I would personally remove two altogether. And on the second one, I don't see it being super urgent, that I would change that to, instead of going to joint legislative justice, that it would come to the committees. And that we would deal with it in January, and come back and they can come and ask BAA, et cetera. That would be my preference, but that's just one man's opinion.
You know, every so often I agree with the vice chair. I have a question though, Chair. It's, you sit on joint justice oversight. Politically, is there a benefit of having some of these players at the table to get the first look at this and sort of move it along that way rather than come to us and bring it back up through?
Well, you do have a member from House Appropriations Committee. That you have a member from House Appropriations Committee, and you have a member from Senate Appropriations Committee, and they do get the BAA in December. Middle of December, they get the BAA between these two sessions. In the middle of a biennium, they get it. They start work in December, so that they like to get the BAA done about the second week in January, that we're in session. Second or third week at the latest. They want to get it done before the new budget gets proposed. So it's a quicker startup for next session for the Appropriations Committee. So there's Trevor, who's been on it.
No, it's Senator Norris.
For Probes, it's Senator Norris for Probes. We haven't done the House one yet. But usually it's Representative Trevor. So, I can go either way. I know the committee really wanted it to come directly to the legislature and not to joint justice. But Connor, you do bring up a good point. I don't know if you meant to or not.
Having money people in the conversation is not a bad thing if you need more money at that point, right?
Yeah, you have both appropriations committees covered. You have both institutions committees covered. You have both judiciary committees covered and human services and health and welfare covered. And you also have a member of the House and Senate at large.
Do we have Senate institutions on that committee?
Yeah, Senator Warren.
Oh, right.
So can we do this in two sections then? So, because I can go either way on the second one, although I have a preference. But can we get an agreement on two? I mean, at
Yeah,
least
two's out.
two is out, okay.
Is everybody in agreement with
Was
that?
out 10 minutes ago.
Well, yeah, but it's still there, so I don't want to be here till 3 talking about the same thing, so.
I think the department would be happy to testify at joint justice if we're at, to give a preview or make the consultant available for joint justice. Testimony or give an overview, we're not looking through the nuts and bolts of the RFP itself, either give a preview of its findings. Whether or not that's required in session law, we're happy to do that.
So what is the time frame for you to go out with a consultant, thinking you can get that RFP going and the consultant can finish the RFP and report back to how you move forward? What do you think is the time frame?
Well, as these things often go, it's longer probably than we would like. I know we do also have the RFP to look at our health system. And I think there was some potential that this could maybe be an addendum to that. Looking at bulletin 3.5 and whether that falls within kind of the scope of the procured services for that. But I think that's a potential possibility that would expedite the process.
And bulletin 3.5 for new folks is the bulletin for state agencies when they have to go out to bid. It's a requirement there. So if it could be added on to that one that you already have, won't take as long. But would you be done by November 5th? Would it be done by November 15th, or is it more in January and you could see it in BAA?
I don't know. I can't say. We'd like it to be done as quickly as possible.
Where are we as a committee here, folks?
Which one? Is two gone? Two's gone?
Two's gone.
Okay.
Do it. Let's traditionally begin
Well, I
to.
know that, but it was still there, so.
We have to
Hey.
do two. Yeah, right. we have to
There's
do
always,
two.
I mean, you could still do something unconstitutional. I just would advise against it.
Our council told us.
So getting us back on track, so
I'll take
since Connor brought up a good point, the chair says it's a good point, I'm fine with leaving number two the way it is. Even though, like, I'm not in a hurry, but I see the
New number
value.
two.
The
Real
new
time.
number two. The new number two.
We're back on number two.
Former three, new two.
I'm only. We're doing wastewater next week. I'm only joking.
The Neo
I
two,
can't wait for era.
so. What does everybody else think, guys? Number two,
I like number two.
okay.
I'm good leaving it too, because like, it's coming back to us anyways, right? There's no chance these guys don't come back and we're like, we forget to mention how'd the report go, you know, it's,
Yeah, and I
You
think,
could potentially bump it to December first,
yeah,
give like an extra 2 weeks because the last meeting is not gonna be before that.
Just do December first, it's fine. What I want to make sure is we wanted some guardrails per se, or framework around that RFP in terms of what to look at.
right.
And that's what we're looking at on A, B, C, and D. And is that implicit that it's part of the RFP that we're hoping, if it's in the report back? That's my question, because we wanted to make sure that some things were covered in that RFP. That's the way.
I mean, you could make that more explicit so that these findings and recommendations would be reflected in the implementation plan or something to that effect.
Want it, Karen?
another question. Would we need to explicitly write well path, Ben? I'd never say a bad word about them, don't get me wrong, but I know we're in the renegotiation period.
I mean, you
For your
could,
extension, we just leave it at medical contractor.
you could just say a third-party medical contractor.
Yeah,
I'd be a little more comfortable with that.
because it also, you want to come back to change it if they don't get the contract.
Exactly. yeah.
Exactly. I'm with you, Connor.
God, we're simpatico today, man.
This is not gonna work
Then
out.
and then we
Freaky Friday.
get scary. And with Gina, you're in real trouble.
Oh, jeez. I'll never
That's
agree with Gina.
scary. The two of you have agreed how many times?
2.5.
That's
I'm
scary.
joining the R caucus.
We get the rest of you to agree, we got 25 minutes. So seriously.
Yeah, so now it reads that, an analysis of how the program developed would impact any contract with the department's third-party medical.
Yes.
Yes.
So that would, by saying any, would either say the existing one or anyone that may be negotiated between now and then.
Very good. Thank you, Ben.
So let's
that was
go
the
back up to,
And with B here and any reference to any CC, I'll work in that it could be either one,
so the
unless you take
question
it out.
is, on B for the 100,000. Do we want to keep that 100,000 in as a treatment facility transition to start the program? Or do we take it out? That's what we're talking about. It's probably an implementation plan from the consultant, probably isn't gonna come back until November. And if there's any money needed for carrying it out would be in BAA.
As we talked about it several times, I think we said we were taking it out.
Yep.
It might have changed like number two's changed.
It should come out.
Out?
Agreed, Mary.
Delete B. Made it shorter. So is that something DOC can live with? You agree with it?
I think PAA could be a vehicle for.
So
any funding needed.
Does DOC agree with this language?
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. All that bad.
Oh,
That was easy.
I mean, you know Katie, but.
No, I'm not. You are correct.
Yeah, she's undoing some of our language last year.
Thank you so much. That was great to have you here.
So we also have the judges, but not judges, the deputy sheriffs.
Yep.
So Connor, you're working with Martin. Have you done anything? You're so
I
fast.
started drafting some stuff. I'll run it by him this weekend.
Why don't we put Ben in that loop?
Sure.
Because Ben's gonna do the language in the letter to approach for that.
So I'll do an email with Ben and Martin this weekend when I get the language.
Because we want to,
So
for us, Ben, the focus will be that it will help DOC in terms of staffing. And
So what is it? Is it an allocation of funds or?
it's the 6 positions for the deputy sheriffs. And for our view of the 6 positions for deputy sheriff, our view is that it will help DOC in these matters, which is
Or transports?
Transports.
transports and staff, right?
Yeah.
And then for judiciary, it would probably be court backlog to,
Well, yeah, it'd be court backlog, but they also would be transports because it's to the courts.
Right. but for us, it frees up correctional staff so they can do their correctional duties and not judiciary duties.
So would these sheriffs be exclusively assigned to transports or would be like other staffing issues or staffing needs?
That's something you gotta work with Martin,
yeah, maybe I'll give Annie Noonan a call.
give Annie a call,
Yeah.
because I think they were,
Who's
they, Annie Noonan, she's
Deputy
with
Director.
the-
Sheriff? Yeah.
Okay.
they were really talking about the deputy sheriffs that would be used for transports.
Which is separate, so.
I'll catch up with Annie this weekend. and
Catch
get a good
catch
time.
up with Annie, circle with Martin, because we want the language to be the same, except we want it also to include DOC. That it helps DOC staffing. That's our linkage with this committee
Yeah.
for wanting to support those positions. Because video arraignments are having an impact on DOC,
Yeah.
and that's our focus, why we're making that recommendation. Whereas judiciary is making the recommendation for another reason.
Yep.
Then the other part is Wi-Fi
Yep.
within DOC.
Mhm.
And Ben will be working on this. So there's gonna be language, Ben, from here, as well as energy and IT committee. So there is Kevin and Brian are working on that with a member of the energy committee, working with DOC, because thinking is we support the $3 million general fund for Wi-Fi. Well, the 3 million that Probst is looking in for Wi-Fi. And before that is released
That's Wi-Fi in the facilities.
in the facilities, before that's released, there's some benchmarks that need to be met. And that's what Brian and Kevin and Chris Merrow are gonna work with DOC. Because Agency of Digital Service is saying there hasn't been any planning done for it, so they're not really supporting this. Right. That was a result of our conversation this morning, right?
Yes, and we just note as well that it's not in the governor's recommended budget, so.
Right,
Speak to it.
right.
We understand.
So I've asked these folks to finish up by Tuesday. So they can get the concept to you, so that you can put that in language.
So the Wi-Fi and then the sheriffs are just gonna go into the committee letter. Okay. And then support $3 million for Wi-Fi and correctional facilities as long as certain requirements are met, and then that information will come by Tuesday.
And this is gonna go in the letter too.
Okay. In addition to staying in the big bill.
Yeah, this is gonna be our letter.
So you want that, do you also want that in the big bill?
This?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is our recommendation to be included with that appropriation that the governor has proposed. Changing the recommendation from 300 to 200, and we're putting parameters around what the or clarification what the RFP really needs to cover. So that needs to be in the letter. So we have one more thing that goes in the letter. to
Mhm.
approves. The 1.6 million for recovery. And I don't know, is it recovery centers in Vermont? You're working with Teresa on this.
I have talked to Teresa yesterday.
Is it the Recovery Center like coalition?
Yes,
That-
something, and it's
Partners of Vermont.
Recovery Partners of Vermont, the 1.6 is to go to putting in recovery coaching into our correctional facilities. And the 1.6 is coming from the opioid settlement fund. And this is connected to H218.
And I have to read that because Teresa and I went over it this morning and there's no place in there that there's specifically a 1.6. So I gotta go through it in more detail. She invited me to testimony on Wednesday, which is too late. But so I'll read it over the weekend and figure out something and
Is that base funding?
1.6 is on top of, I don't
So I
know.
thought they were requesting base funding, which is interesting because the settlement funds, obviously, it gets a little wonky when you're thinking about base pressure.
I mean, I think that would be a good question for JFO, but I would advise the committee that to create a base funding expectation using a settlement fund may cause issues in the future.
But that's in that bill.
I'm gonna read it this
I
weekend.
mean, I talked to Representative Wood about it, and she said they're looking to fund that 1.6 with the opioid settlement fund.
But I don't,
They were-
218,
But the 1.6 was for the center's, kind of like base budgets. So I would assume that would be an ongoing pressure.
it's an ongoing, but they were gonna put that towards recovery coaching in DOC. Or that would
Or
help.
some of it, I think, I mean, by extension, it would help stabilize the centers, they would be able to provide that coaching ongoing, but.
Kind of what Teresa said this morning. She said, well, it's not for that specific, some of it could be. But also when we went through the bill, there was no specific section for this. So like I said, I have to read the actual words. Again, I didn't read it today. Only what her and I flew through this morning in 20 minutes of conversation. So
Just know that's an issue, and I think I've talked to Dr. Levine about some of the difficulties of base pressures in the settlement funds.
Yeah.
And how they divide that out, it's be tricky. Anyway, just wanted to flag
we
that.
could chat.
Yeah, because I think the committee supports that increase to 1.6, because we see that it would really help recovery coaching, stabilize recovery coaching within our facilities, and it would give the recovery centers more flexibility that they could put recovery coaching in more facilities.
And to be clear, we've put money toward that. We put 500,000 in BAA and then $1 million of settlement funds last year. It's kind of a pot of money that we've granted out to all centers to do facility coaching and probation parole coaching. Then we're also hoping to bring down some money, Senator Welch, in a congressionally directed spending package.
That may
although
be dead,
who
though.
knows? Yeah, the vagaries of Congress.
Yeah.
Just in terms of timeline, I understand, this is weekend homework. When is this letter going to appropriations?
I want it done by Tuesday, because it goes.
Well, and so if you need to finish the letter by a certain time, when should we have our stuff to you?
No later than Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday.
yeah, I mean, as early as you can get it.
Of course, yeah, I don't have to drag my feet on it, but.
Because we have to look at this.
Yeah,
And then we have to, because Approps wants recommendations in on Wednesday, the 26th.
So Sunday.
which time, like, is it end of the day on Wednesday? So, I mean, honestly, if you could get it to me like by 9 on Tuesday, then I'd have time to put it into the letter and then you could look at it in the afternoon.
It'll be before then, yeah.
9 on Tuesday.
With Annie.
Clarify 9 on Tuesday.
9 a.m.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah, because if it's 9 p.m., then you're not gonna get a chance of, I mean, I guess you could, but it's be tight.
It's really not. Tuesday's Monday.
I'm gonna get Monday, exactly.
Is that okay? I mean,
Oh, yeah,
I can
no, of
always
course.
adjust,
We'll
but
make it work.
No, just wanted to know.
There's only so much you can do.
And then it will give Ben time to put it together, and we probably won't look at it until Wednesday, depending what our schedule is. I mean,
Yeah.
I just,
well, I can just look at my schedule quickly too.
And then
And then we've got a few other things on this appropriation list that's not connected to DOC that we've also got to kind of work through a little bit.
So right now, I have no committee scheduled for Tuesday. I do have, I'm in this committee actually at 11 on Wednesday
And what,
on H 176, 191 and 219, but I know one of those has been,
yeah, 191 we're not doing.
okay, yeah, so.
So it's 176, which is the work camp,
Right.
and 219 is the kids apart. So DOC, if you've been in the loop on this?
That feels sensitive.
Yeah.
One's controversial, one's not.
One has money, well, they both have money, but I hope the state's attorneys have been.
What did we say we're not doing?
921, prohibiting use of private prisons.
The one you wanted.
I was gonna, we wouldn't be able to.
Oh, You
get
just
that
figured
out.
that was really me. I just got to try to make it look like you
We wouldn't
did.
get that out. The state's attorneys, they've been notified, do you know about the work through?
I have no idea.
They know it's out there, but I don't know if they know about it being scheduled for today.
We should know about it.
Yeah,
State's attorneys.
Yeah.
yeah.
Annie anyway, so.
We'll talk to Annie. You
Talk
could,
to Annie about that,
Yeah.
please. I mean, we normally would have Phil.
I know Kim McManus is, I think she's out of town this week. So it might be good to either talk to Annie or to Tim Leaders Dumont, see if the executive director.
I'll leave that to you.
So I just want to quickly just go back over everything and make sure that I've got all my ducks in a row.
You know, what about my guys?
Okay, so we are. This language on the screen is gonna go into the letter. I am going to just format it correctly and then add the references to the complex and to the work camp throughout.
Yes, sir.
Everything else though seems to, like, substance wise, seems approved. At least tentatively. And then I will also add the sheriff's positions, the 6 positions for deputy sheriffs to assist with court transports. And I'm gonna say, and other staffing needs as determined by the Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs for the purpose of assisting courts and the department with docket backlog and hearings.
Tentatively.
Tentatively, but that's what's probably gonna go in the draft, at least for now. And then for the Wi-Fi, that the committee supports $3 million for the provision of Wi-Fi in correctional facilities as long as certain requirements are met, which Manir will, did I butcher your last name?
Perfecto.
Okay.
And Kevin Winters.
Oh, and Representative Winters will get me by midnight on Monday.
At the latest. Much earlier, we hope.
And then the Recovery Partners of Vermont, 1.6 towards recovery coaching in correctional facilities from the opioid abatement settlement fund. Question, I quickly looked at H218. There was nothing that I could see quickly that mentions,
Recovery coaching.
yeah. And then there's an open question over one-time or base funding.
Yeah.
Now, the way that, I think this is good to advise the committee, the way that would work in session law is, technically year to year, the budget, it's all theoretically one-time spending, right? There's just certain base level expectations that carry over from year to year. So I'm not sure it would be addressed in session law as either, you could specify one time, but typically you don't specify base. You could. But I think in the letter, you could do whatever you'd like. So,
Let the folks figure out what
Yeah.
they're doing.
Right.
It's just a recommend.
And we may have to have an offline conversation about that, because right now it's a speculation, but it's not, it doesn't appear to be in that bill. And if it is,
Well, the 1.6 is,
well,
that's what Lisa mentioned too.
but yeah, when I talked to her, she said it wasn't. So that's the whole.
there's no 1.6, there's a 1.8 or yeah, it's almost, it's 1.9.
It's more encompassing. So that's, we could
Is there
review.
money for the recovery? Is there money for
So-
recovery centers?
Yeah, they're saying that they're sourcing a series of appropriations from the opioid settlement fund or special fund. 1.96 to the Department of Health to fund 26 outreach or case management staff positions within the preferred provider network for the provision of services that increase motivation of and engagement with individuals with substance use disorders in settings such as police barracks, shelters, social service organizations, and elsewhere in the community. It also says that it's the intent that the positions would be funded annually. So that's sort of a way you give a nod to it, because you can't bind future legislators. So you could say, it's our intent that it's done this way, but we're not telling you what to do. And then there's 1.1 to DOH for the purpose of awarding grants to the city of Burlington. I don't think that's.
But it really is a situation where we're gonna read the bill.
So we have 1.2 to DOH for recovery residences. I don't know if
Which is the
that,
same thing.
Yeah.
So,
Same time.
which, I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but I'm going to, is until we read that bill specifically, and I'll sit down and read it. It's speculation. We don't, what Teresa and I had a per conversation with Allison and Teresa have conversations, they're not quite the same. And the language doesn't seem to be there. So until we sit down, which I'll be happy to do this weekend, and read it, it's a speculation. We don't know. So.
I mean, I'm also happy to just, again, my cursory review, it's not there.
Right.
I'm happy to just draft it. So you have
That's
it.
not a point, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't appear to be. So. But we can go in circles about it all day long. It's still not gonna be there.
Yeah, because I asked her, I said,
I know.
we're interested in the 1.6 for recovery centers, because that will help with recovery coaching. She said that's included, that's in 218. We're looking at that, and it would be through the opioid. So what do I know?
No, I'm too good.
Maybe confusion and
Because
terminology.
And I said, Alice said about this, and she's like, well, not all of it. And so I'm like, well.
Well, 1.6 is not all of 1.9.
No, but that one.
It's 218.
I think last year it was.
Until we look at it though, we're not gonna know. And I
We'll
didn't,
figure that out
Yeah.
next week.
The legislature's been doing that recently.
So that's what we need Ben for. So we've got you. Then the rest of the letter, we'll figure out who's, maybe Kevin and Sean.
So info by end of Monday, draft it Tuesday, and then you can either call me in Tuesday afternoon, or we can attach it somewhere on Wednesday morning, since I'll already be here.
Yeah. You're the best.
But-
Anything else before we finish up? So next Tuesday, I think it's Tuesday afternoon, Eric Blatt's coming in. So this is gonna be a place, I'm assuming, because usually in the past, this is a very complicated topic dealing with municipal pollution grants. It's in the clean water section. Municipal pollution grants, clean water revolving loan fund. Now, there isn't any recommendation for funding clean water revolving loan fund for FY 26. So that begs the question, there's a lot of previous money somewhere. And how is that operating? And how is that tied in to the 14.5 million that's here, that's being unreserved? It was put in the second sub-account of the cash fund to match the IIJA funds for water and drinking water, wastewater and drinking water projects back home. So that's going to be integral to the conversation with Eric Blatt on Tuesday afternoon about the Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund.
Yeah.
What are you mumbling down there?
Nothing.
And then we also have Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund. So my thinking is, just knowing on past history, because we're gonna have to go back a couple years and track the money, I'm gonna need one or two people to work on this. The markup. So I'm wondering if Joe, if you'd be willing to help with some of this, because it's gonna take a lot of work in digging in, and then see.
Now, this appears on the repo sheets? No.
It's gonna appear, no, it's gonna appear on possibly, but also previous capital bills that we've put money in. Too. you're gonna have a lot of
I just need
documents.
to know my launch point.
There are
Will-
some things in
I will on Tuesday? Okay, so that's all I need to do is just agree in principle on Friday? Okay.
Just want to give you a heads up to pay more attention on Tuesday.
Very,
I mean,
it's very complicated.
there may be one other person too,
Yeah,
maybe
we-
two people.
I thought we said, didn't this morning we decided who that was gonna be?
No, that was
Something else.
that was
I mean,
something.
I'll help,
This morning.
I'll help Joe.
So then you want to start marking stuff up on Wednesdays? That's your intent?
No, it's not for Wednesday. This is gonna be for the capital bill.
No, I thought, but then Wednesday, we're doing next Tuesday. But that's, what's the plan to start markup on Wednesday?
No,
Yes. Okay.
no, that's the
See, I
plan.
listen.
The clean water thing, because you folks are working on dams, right?
Which,
We got some folks working on dams.
Yes, yes.
And then, the clean water for municipal money that goes out there is gonna have to be tracked, because I think there's gonna be a lot of moving pieces on that. There's gonna be,
Make sure you dig deep to get the answer.
I've got some files on that I should probably share with you.
on the dams?
no, on the clean water.
Some of the municipal projects here, because you know, you want to pay attention to like the bonding and everything,
Yes.
but like, they do an annual report that sometimes they give to us and sometimes they don't, and you really got to put the pieces together here.
And you
I
gotta-
think I've got some of it, so.
Yeah, so we'll figure that. I mean, Ben, this is the other world that we live in here.
Really happy I'm not a part of it.
Corrections and wastewater, it doesn't get any better than that.
That's great.
I'll bet it's in. So, one other thing before we go, what is it you,
Well, and I would like Mary,
that's what I want to talk
the
about.
queen bee, the other queen bee, to report on the
Yeah.
vines stuff that Kevin and I spoke to Jennifer about.
Yeah, victim
Yeah,
notification.
there.
That's where I was headed while Ben is here.
Right.
There's movement on
Let
that.
me just think back to what she is going to, wait, let me focus on yesterday's discussion. I'm still on number 2 on our sheet.
Still thinking about water towers.
No,
This is victim notification.
Yeah.
There's a
Discussion.
notification, and she had indicated very much that, like, what we had wanted, we want, this is really difficult to, let me just think a
Do
second.
you want me to throw in a little?
Throw a little bit in.
Okay,
there.
so she actually, while we were talking about fines, someone was watching it on there. And it ran up the flagpole
Oh,
pretty
yes.
quick.
Oh, yeah, it does.
And Vines has heard us pretty loud and clearly of what we were asking about. And they capitulated, they decided that they are going to do the things we asked
Yeah,
for.
what did we ask? I gotta find my.
Is this
That's
based
what
off
I'm
of
saying,
the,
it's hard to switch from.
but is this based off the letter from Justice Oversight? Because if that's it, it was, part of the question was to whether to divide, have sort of a different system for those post conviction or have a different one, you know, those that are still going through the process.
That
Because there's two.
was part of it.
Okay.
You're dealing with victim notification that's through the state's attorneys, which is done post adjudication. I mean, pre-adjudication.
DOC.
And then DOC once they're incarcerated. So you got two different systems and two different entities that are notifying victims, and that's where the confusion is.
But she'd also said that they were gonna put more, they were gonna get to it sooner
Right,
and give people notification sooner, and they're gonna look into the system of how to make that change.
and also giving them options of having a more personal contact instead of just this menu of things people can pick without really knowing what they're picking. I think they really got kind of the word with what we were talking about in the committee. Like Sean said, she goes, it went like she got a call like that afternoon, and they were
From Vine,
Yeah.
right on it, saying
Yes.
that
did DOC know this?
I don't think
News to me, I'm learning.
they wanted,
Right.
they wanted to I guess dot every I and cross every T we talked about.
She didn't quite say it, but she implied that we got it covered. Which blew our
We
mind.
said-
Jennifer Bowman said
Yeah,
this?
yeah.
Yeah.
And she's going to email us with an update of what it is we spoke about at lunch yesterday.
So how would Vine know that we were dealing with this?
I mean, we talked to our victim
You're listening.
services unit that works with
Oh, they-
fines.
So they may
They
have.
could have been just watching.
From what she indicated, they were listening.
They were watching.
And
Your
I mean,
victim
we-
services
well, our-
group?
I can't speak for Jennifer Cohen or for Vines, the tool, but we spoke with our victim services unit and we talked about, because we were talking about earned time credit, right? And potentially some proactive notification around reductions in earned time. And our victim services unit said, you know, they're happy to do those notifications for folks if that's, and I think our victim services unit though wanted to be very clear that folks would opt in for
Right.
that so that they weren't getting, you know, re-triggered by, you know, potential notifications every 30 days or 90 days, what have you. So our team said they're happy to do those push notifications for folks who would like to get that call. They would like them to opt in.
The reason we're kind of fumbling here, or I'm fumbling, not you, Sean, is that she was going to do the kind of a summary of what we discussed in detail from her end, how it was going to be covered, what our wishes were, but basically everything we talked about the other day, she's right on with them. And it sounded like Vines was going to, and I said, we just need to have where they're actually going to do it and how they're going to get it done. So that we've got a pretty comfortable, you know, understanding of what's going forward.
So if I remember the letter again correctly, the other, I think, two aspects were basically fixing the interface
Mhm.
because people don't know how to navigate it.
Right.
And then the other
That's on
one,
DLC's.
No, it's really the
I think it's,
The Vine?
if I'm recalling the testimony correctly, I think it was really about the contractor.
Right.
And then the other part, which may have been why they were so attentive and responsive, was to explore the possibility of getting someone else. Those, so I
That
think
always
those,
is an insight.
I think those were the three points with the victim notification system from Justice Oversight.
So is Jen gonna come back with us and lay that out?
Okay, she'll
She's
do
gonna
any,
Send you a write-up
Okay.
that
And-
backs up
and
what
us.
we're trying to say and copy us because you're the one that will decide what to do next with the information.
and she said she'd come back anytime they heard us loud.
She did suggest that too, that's right.
I've seen a copy of the suggested language. I think that tinkers, it's around the earned time.
Yes.
I know there's also a
Yes.
bill on this, so I'm not going to get too far forward, but I think we had one small edit of language that Jen suggested, because we want it to be an opt-in system so that folks are just getting.
Right.
So there's gonna be suggested language.
Yes, we asked her because she's the expert in
Yeah.
it. Instead of us trying
To
to.
find a vehicle to put that on. We may have to do that on 176 or 219. Yeah, gotta find a vehicle. Put that on.
Yeah, she basically offered to come in and do testimony backing up the write-up. And that's why your scheduling is,
Well, if we do that, we gotta find a vehicle.
Yep.
And get it done by
She
crossover.
would bring anyone else that was needed.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Is there anything in
Let me think.
judiciary that maybe
Let me think on that,
we could
because
use?
there might be,
There might be more of a nexus there.
yeah.
You can't just, we could do it.
You know, well, I can't talk about this yet. I'll be able to talk about it next week.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a committee bill, but you need a
Well,
vehicle.
now you have
To
some
do it.
pins and needles.
Well, then you just have to call me back. Is there, I'm gonna be here.
Just have to get your information then on the other topics sooner so we can deal with this
Right.
sooner.
Well, I remember what's going on. I just, once Jen has her update, we can go from there.
Thank you, Ben.
But
But it was promising. That's the bottom
Right,
line, is
yeah.
that it was positive
people
news.
paid attention. Sometimes if you're willing to pull something, pay attention. Remember the agency of ag last year? We pulled their $500,000 and next day the secretary was sitting in here.
They were
Yeah, we've been trying to get information from minorities.
I'm watching.
Yeah, for 3 weeks we tried to get
Kick
information.
the door down.
Oh, well, we'll put the money back.
Getting chippy on a Friday.
Yeah, we're tired. Anything else before we finish up for the week and then next week for our last week before our meeting break?
My questions for offline.
Thank you,